You are constantly being evaluated by your cat, and most of the signals shaping their behavior happen before you even realize anything has changed. If you watch closely, their actions begin to feel less like habits and more like real-time decisions. They aren't just reacting to what you do, they're continuously assessing how stable your presence feels. That assessment doesn't show up in obvious ways. It appears in small shifts that happen just before anything noticeable occurs. A pause that lasts half a second longer than usual, a slight repositioning of their paws, or a subtle tightening of their posture can reveal what they're processing. And those signals almost always appear before any clear reaction takes place. Watch your cat the next time they're about to move away from you. The moment right before they leave is where the entire decision becomes visible. They don't move immediately, their body compresses slightly, their attention narrows, and their movement becomes calculated rather than casual. And this is where everything starts to separate, because what looks like a simple action is actually the final step of something that began earlier. Cats don't rely on large movements to communicate. They adjust in controlled, almost minimal ways that reflect internal changes rather than external ones. That's why their behavior can feel difficult to read at first. The signal is there, but it exists in timing, not in volume. Have you ever noticed your cat sitting completely still except for the tip of their tail? That small movement often carries more meaning than their entire body combined. When the tail tip begins to flick slowly while the rest of the body stays frozen, their attention is narrowing onto something specific. They are focusing on something before it becomes visible to you. As that flick becomes sharper or more frequent, the internal tension builds, and that tension almost always resolves into movement shortly after. This is where most people misread what they're seeing, because they focus on the movement that happens instead of the signal that came before it. The same pattern appears in how your cat chooses space. When they move into a box, a drawer, or a narrow corner, it follows a consistent structure. Those spaces reduce how much of the environment they need to track at once, and that reduction allows their body to release tension without losing control. It isn't about comfort in a simple sense, it's about limiting uncertainty. And this is where the behavior becomes more precise, because every choice your cat makes is tied to how manageable the environment feels to them. You might notice your cat suddenly freezing in place, even when the room seems quiet. That stillness often appears before anything changes in your awareness. Their hearing picks up faint movement, their vision detects subtle shifts, and their body prepares before acting. Instead of reacting instantly, they hold position and gather more information. That moment of stillness is not empty. It's the exact point where attention becomes sharper and decisions begin forming underneath it. Watch their posture during that pause. Their muscles engage slightly, their head adjusts by small degrees, and their breathing becomes more controlled. That combination marks a transition into heightened awareness, and it almost always happens before movement follows. This is where behavior becomes predictable in a deeper way, not because the actions repeat, but because the sequence leading to them stays consistent. A sudden sprint across the room rarely appears out of nowhere. It's usually built on quiet observation that goes unnoticed. The stillness, the focus, and the buildup of tension all accumulate first. And once you recognize that buildup, the movement that follows stops feeling sudden. Cats don't waste energy. Even their bursts of activity follow structured patterns rooted in instinct. Short sprints, sudden stops, and sharp directional changes mirror hunting behavior. They're simply condensed into smaller spaces. The repetitive movement helps regulate internal tension and restore balance. It's a reset that follows a brief increase in awareness. Watch what your cat does right after something minor changes in the room. That response often reveals more than the change itself. Some cats reposition quietly, others groom, and some remain still longer than expected. Each variation reflects a different way of stabilizing their internal state. And this is where everything starts to connect. Because behavior is no longer just reaction, it becomes part of a system. Even eye contact follows this pattern. A soft gaze with slow blinking appears when vigilance decreases and control feels maintained. Their body lowers slightly, their movements slow, and their attention softens. That combination signals a state where they no longer need to actively monitor you. If you're starting to recognize these patterns, the next part becomes important, because it connects behaviors that usually feel unrelated. When your cat turns their back toward you, that choice carries weight. It reflects a moment where constant awareness is no longer required. They're allowing themselves to reduce monitoring in your presence, and that only happens when a certain threshold has been reached. This is where the behavior becomes less obvious and more revealing, because sometimes what your cat chooses not to do carries more meaning than what they do. Even the way your cat rests follows this structure. A tightly curled position reduces exposure, while a stretched, open posture reflects a different level of ease. The location matters just as much. Elevated spots provide visibility, while enclosed ones provide control. And this is the point where everything reframes. Your cat isn't reacting to your behavior, they're constantly calculating how stable your presence feels. Every movement you make, every pause, every shift in energy contributes to that calculation, and their behavior adjusts in real time based on the result. If certain behaviors only appear when you're nearby, that connection is not accidental. It means those behaviors are directly tied to how they interpret you. Over time, these patterns become easier to recognize, not because your cat becomes simpler, but because the structure behind their behavior stays consistent. They are always balancing awareness, control, and predictability, and every small movement reflects where that balance currently sits. Once you begin to notice these signals, their behavior stops feeling confusing. It becomes a continuous form of communication happening right in front of you. The way your cat behaves around you is never just a collection of moments. It's an ongoing reading of who you are to them, second by second. Watch the next video to understand your furry friend better, and don't forget to subscribe for more.